All right. There it is. Good evening, everybody. My name is Tim Golden. Thank you so much for joining us for this, the first event of our virtual visit days. So our campus preview days are being offered a little differently than in the past. We're going for an a la carte approach, and we are so glad that you've chosen to join us tonight, when you'll have the chance to ask questions of our interns who are currently in the program. And if everything goes according to plan, you'll hear very little from me, because they're the ones who you want to hear from tonight. So I am happy to answer any questions that anyone has about the admissions process or the application process. But if you have questions about what it's like to be in the program, have I got some folks for you to talk to. So I'm going to hand it over to them. Our interns will introduce themselves, and then please feel free to ask your questions however you feel comfortable. I will keep an eye on the chat, so if you feel most comfortable putting them there, I or the interns will pull them from that spot, or if you'd rather unmute and ask your questions that way, whatever works best for you, this time is for you, and I am going to hand it over to our interns.
I can start with the introduction. So hi, everybody. My name is Fatima. I am doing a 5th grade placement at Patton Gill Elementary School here in Ann Arbor.
I can go next. My name is Lauren Perry. I'm student teaching in a 2nd grade classroom at Mitchell Elementary in Ann Arbor Public Schools. And all of us are teaching virtually right now.
Hi, I'm Shannon. I am teaching, or I'm the teaching intern in a 5th grade class at Mitchell Elementary School.
My name is Dan. I am also teaching 5th grade at Patton Gill Elementary.
And I'm Megan, and I am also student teaching at Patton Gill in 3rd grade. We are ready for any questions.
Can you all talk a little bit maybe about why you specifically chose Michigan in this program?
I can start, I guess. So I chose Michigan because I like that the LMAC program is 1 year. It's like one very intense year. And it's, at least this year has been a very long year, even though it's the same amount of days as usual. It's felt a lot longer. But yeah, I really liked that it was 1 year. It's the cohort style that I also really like, because then there's 25 other people who are going through the same exact thing you're going through. And especially this year, it's been so nice to be able to have those people to lean on and talk to. So yeah, I really like that it's 1 year, that it's the cohort style. And then I also chose U of M because you can do an ESL endorsement within the program. And so after this summer, I'll be qualified to teach elementary school, language arts, and ESL, which not all programs have that ESL component. And I personally, I found that a really big draw, because that's a important thing to know in schools nowadays, because there's so many multilingual students. So that's why I chose U of M.
I'll go ahead, Fatima.
Go ahead,
I got
Dan.
next.
So everything that Shannon said, for sure. And then the other biggest draw for me was that your student teaching experience is 1 full year. So you start with your mentor teacher at the beginning of the year. You see how they prepare the year, what kinds of like procedures they put in place. And then you're with these kids the entire year. So you get a sense of what a whole school year is like. And with other programs that I saw, your student teaching experience is like a month only or something like that. So, or maybe it was like 2 months, but it certainly was not a full year. So this was a big draw for me also.
And building off of that, that's what I was going to say. I really liked that it was a full year, but also how they prioritize that it's not a student teaching placement. It's like a pairing. You fill out what you're looking for in a mentor teacher and in a school community and class and all that type of culture for the classroom, and they match you with a mentor teacher rather than just placing you randomly. It's not just Dan wants to teach fifth grade, let's put him with this fifth grade teacher. It's a very meticulous process, and I really appreciated that they prioritize that match.
I can pretty much echo what everyone else has said. There's also a trauma-informed practice mini certificate that some of us are doing. So I'm doing ESL and trauma, which adds a little bit to your workload, but it's really not that bad, especially this particular semester. Seems like it's not going to be as heavy as the middle one was the longest, at least in my opinion. But otherwise, I can echo everything everyone else said. You really do get a lot of experience in the field, even if it is for us virtual.
So I got my undergraduate degree from Michigan State University years ago, and Tim and his colleague was able to really work with my schedule that I had courses from undergrad and were able to get me into the program. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to take like all these classes. I'm never gonna get teacher certified. I ended up not having to take any classes. I was able just to join in the fall and start. So they'll really work with you. I know my case is a little bit different because it just was able to go over pretty nicely from Michigan State to U of M. But they really will work with you to see what class credits count. I know a couple people took some courses over the summer to be prepared, but that was really important to me. Also, I live in Ypsi, and before everything was kind of shut down, the commute was going to be doable for me, so it was also location as well.
Could you guys like lay out like the beginning schedule? So like starting in June, and then you go into student teaching come September when the rest of the kids start, and then what is like kind of class looking like at that point? I'm kind of just confused on how the whole schedule works. So if someone could just pinpoint on that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so I can start again. That's okay. So you start in the summer, and the summer, well, our summer was a little different because usually there's a like a whole like summer learning institute thing, and you do like math and reading. We didn't have that because of COVID. So we just had a lot of online classes. But then yeah, so it's a lot of classes in the summer, and then the fall starts, and you're kind of like you're a little bit in the field. Like what was it, like maybe 2 days a week we were, or well, it was kind of weird. So we were like kind of half days in the field, and then in the afternoons we would have classes. And the classes are kind of on a weird schedule where it's like you're taking like math and writing, and then the math class ends and you start another class. And so there's a lot of classes, especially in the fall. And then once you get past that, then when the winter comes, there's just like 2 classes that you take. And then you're mostly in the field doing your student teaching. And then those classes end, and then it's just like we're just starting. We're pretty much starting this week and next week, like full on in the classroom, student teaching, and then we'll keep doing that for like a couple until end of April, and then it's back to classes. So there's a couple more classes, and then those of us who are doing the ESL endorsement, we keep going with some more classes and hopefully an actual field experience with ESL students. So it's kind of like a rolling thing, but it seems like a lot, and it is a lot, but it's doable, it's manageable.
Yeah, I was just curious as to when student teaching was going to start. I wasn't sure if it was like kind of preparing you a little bit during the summer with the classes and then starting in September, which is what it's somewhat sounding like, with not like completely in the classroom, but like somewhat. So cool.
I actually pulled up, like, ours is a little bit different, I'm sure, this year, but I did pull up our fall calendar, so I could even screen share like
yeah, that would
what
be
that had kind of looked like. But I think, Tim, you might have to give me permission to share my screen. Yeah, it says it's disabled. Now I see it. So this is what our fall had looked like. So the green was field work.
Mhm.
You see I can admit people now. I bet I'm a co-host. That's not important. So we spent like 4 or 5 days per week, half of the day in the field, and then we had classes in the afternoon. And then some Wednesdays last semester, we also had seminar as well. So this would have been like the very beginning of the school year. So we were doing like PD and stuff before the kids came. We did not come like on the first day, as
Right. Okay.
their first day wasn't our first day with them. So this is just
Cool.
kind of what it looked like then.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And if I can just add to that, like if you join this program and in the fall, like there's either hybrid learning or fully back in person, like your mentor teacher is specifically matched to you. So there's someone in LMAC that really listens to what grade you want and what type of teacher you want to work with, and you will be able to observe them for a lot of the time. So don't feel pressure like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be thrown in there like the first week and I'm expected to teach. Like, you know, that mentor teacher is there to guide you and you can just be honest with them. I mean, that's kind of how I am with my MT. I'm just very blunt when I need help, when I don't feel comfortable with something. And so I'm lucky for me, like I love my mentor teacher. We have like a really good personality. It's a good match. So I don't know if that was intentional or not. I'm just happy with the mentor teacher I got.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yes, thank you so much.
So I do see there's a question in the chat that I can answer. Vanessa asked, what was your academic history prior to entering the program? Did you have undergrad degrees that involved the teaching beforehand? So I'll just speak from my experience. I was an education major in undergrad. I studied Spanish education and Spanish literature. And senior year just had a change of heart and decided I wanted to be in an elementary classroom instead of just foreign language. And so I did take 4 years of education classes before coming here. But that was not the experience for everyone in our program. So I'll let someone else explain that.
So I got my undergrad degree in business, and then I worked for 6 years in human resources. So I did not have a lot of teaching experience. All of my teaching experience was really tutoring. But I feel like being in the program, like at this point, I feel totally comfortable teaching a class. Like even with that gap or like the hesitation that I had applying to the program was that I'm going to be behind. I do not feel that right now. I feel like I've been like really well prepared. So don't be intimidated if your undergraduate degree is something outside of education.
Yeah, and I can echo what Fatima just said too, because I studied, I went to MSU and I studied arts and humanities and Spanish. And a lot of the experiences that I've had from undergrad, even though they weren't related to teaching, have really been helpful in my practice now and in this program. So whatever background you're coming from, you'll be able to use that in your teaching. So just like Fatima was saying, she did business and like, you know, business is very different than education, but her experience there is helpful in the classroom too. So wherever you're coming from, I guess that's what I'm trying to say is whatever background you have, whatever undergrad degree that you have, you'll be able, it will come in handy when you are teaching because all of your different identities and backgrounds and knowledges come in handy when you're teaching.
So I have a situation kind of similar to Dan's. So at Michigan State, I studied education, science education, but then I went and worked for 8 years. I taught pre-K instead, and I was a professional nanny for several years. So I had lost For sure. My confidence in teaching, because I was a nanny for 4 years and I was like, okay, so I can take care of people's kids at their house, but I don't know, can I like still be a teacher? So it was always my dream to finish getting certified for elementary. So this program was like the perfect opportunity to get that last year in, to get the student teaching experience. And now I feel like, it's March and our student teaching ends at the end of April, but I feel ready to go into a classroom and teach second grade. So it's a really good feeling.
So from my background, my degree was in psychology. I was going to be pursuing occupational therapy. So I had been doing a lot of work with kids, but the more work I was doing in schools, the more I was leaning towards teaching instead. So I worked as a substitute teacher for 3 years because I wanted to take some time to make sure before I decided to completely switch directions if that's what I actually wanted to do. So I deferred my admission to grad school for OT, started subbing. I've worked at a nonprofit for kids with special needs, things like that. So my background was not, like degree-wise, was not in education, but I did have a decent amount of experience working in schools and with kids. I see the question, do you feel prepared to shift to in-person teaching when the time comes? How has the program helped with preparing for this shift? I do feel prepared. I will say I worked in schools for several years before the program started, which I'm sure helps. But I feel like with the knowledge that we have from the program, most of us probably feel pretty good. Although I would say there's probably like different aspects of things that people are nervous about just because if you haven't worked in schools, you haven't seen those things. And then as far as how has the program helped, I think that the big thing is everyone's kind of learning it together right now, what the shift is going to be. So I feel personally like they're going to be very helpful, but we just found out last week that for sure we're moving back to in-person learning. So I believe it was last week. But I feel like we will be getting a lot of information from them, but they're kind of learning right now at the same pace that we are exactly what's happening and when it's going to be happening. But I feel like my mentor teachers, especially, will be very supportive with any like concerns or questions or anything I have. So I'm not worried about that from like a preparedness perspective.
To answer that question in the chat too, I feel very grateful that I was able to teach as an interventionist for a year before coming here. So I've been in a classroom before. I had experience like setting norms and expectations for kids. But from the program, I would say that I feel very supported and ready to go back to in-person. I think all of our professors have done a very good job understanding that this is a wonky year and that like you can't just teach them how to be teachers for in-person or for virtual learning. And a lot of our professors have found that balance of preparing us to teach virtually in our field placements right now, and also recognizing that our whole careers are not going to be over Zoom and that we need to be prepared to teach in person someday too. And I feel like my mentor teacher has done the same too. It's been a lot of, well, this is what I would do normally, but right now this is what we should do together. And I really appreciate that that balance between those two aspects.
So for me, I have not worked in a school before. So this would be my first year, like really being in a class, but I do feel prepared. It's funny, the things that I feel unprepared about are really silly things. Like, what if I need the bathroom in the middle of a lesson? Like, how does that actually work? Like, I know I can't leave the kids, but then what do I do? You know, or like, what am I supposed to put on my classroom walls? Or like, you know, things like that I'm sure are not like things that are going to make me unprepared. Like, I'm just going to figure them out as I go. Like, I have to send them something to the office, you know, things like that. But in terms of like being able to teach, I definitely feel prepared. And just like what Megan and Dan have said, that my mentor teacher has been super supportive. We have a lot of very open communication. and just the program, like even things about setting up the class, like that was one of my concerns. We had like a whole class on that really with our exceptionalities class, like how to set up your classroom, what you should think about putting on your walls, what kids need to see. And like we've seen a lot of videos that show people's classrooms and things like that. And just the knowledge that I've gained in the program, I do feel prepared even though I have not been in a class and this is going to be new for me.
Yeah, I would also say that this program really teaches you how to be a teacher in whatever setting you want to teach in. So like it really like it really goes down to kind of like to really the fundamentals of teaching and like skills and things that can be applied to virtual, in person, if you want to teach abroad, if you want to, you know, be an interventionist and teach very specific things. Like this program really does a good job of kind of encompassing like the teaching profession and I don't know, just like preparing you to be a teacher in whatever setting. So I mean, I feel the same way as Fatima where yeah, I think about like I use the bathroom all the like my bathroom's right there. I don't have to worry about it. Now I'm like, oh, like this whole school is gonna be, you know, and it's gonna be so different too than, you know, my experiences in classrooms before, but everyone's kind of in the same boat where it's like it's all weird and we're all trying to figure it out together. So yeah, so I do have like some anxiety about going back in person, but I do feel prepared as a teacher. I feel that this program has really prepared me to step into a teaching role, you know, in so many different settings.
Can I just add one more thing, Lauren, before you go? The other thing that I think about a lot is that so much of teaching is about relationships, building relationships with your students and like families and things like that. And doing that virtually is really hard, but I was able to do that like just fine. And so that's something that I think is going to be easier when you're in person. And even when you think about planning lessons, like it's hard to do that virtually. It's harder to do it virtually. So because you have to, there are like things like Dan and I are working on a lesson where you have to plant seeds. Like we're going round and round trying to figure out how are we going to plant these seeds, you know? So you have to be really creative online. And I do feel like if I can do this online, I can totally do it in person. Sorry, Lauren.
Well, that's okay. Megan, did you want to add something before?
I was just going to say one thing that I think is worth noting too, just with COVID and everything, none of us are required to go back in person. Just if anyone was wondering about that, it is completely up to us. Actually, we got an email today. It's up to us and our mentor teacher together to make the decision individually for each person if they want to go back. So the program has been very conscientious of individual choices regarding like the pandemic and things like that.
So one other thing I wanted to mention, like one of my favorite experiences, and it's not exactly always been easy, is that I'm working on like a whole team of second grade teachers at Mitchell. So I have my mentor teacher and then two of her colleagues and then another LMAC intern that is also a student teacher. So the five of us meet every day and we're planning together. And it's kind of hard because it's five different visions trying to come in as one, but it's such an important experience and eye-opening for me of learning about collaborating and how I can take those skills into the workforce in the future. So even though it's virtual, I know like the kind of skills and relationships that I can build and ask for help so that when we do go back in person, like I can still carry those skills. And if I need help figuring something out, there'll be people at the school that I get my first job at. I'm also kind of just thinking about like the future of like, there's people asking me, okay, you're student teaching virtually, like, how are you going to get a job in person someday? So that's how I'm going to kind of carry it over. And I really think also for job interviews, you can spin this virtual experience to be a very positive thing. So I've talked to one principal already outside of Mitchell, and I kind of just said that U of M is really special because we're learning how to teach virtually in some of our technology courses. And then we're actually doing it, you know, in a student teaching setting. So we have this really unique skill set that maybe not all teachers have virtually right now, that they're just been thrown into it over the last year and a half. So that's something else to consider in case this is still going on and off over the next couple of years.
I had a question. Sorry, I came a little late, so I'm not quite sure if you guys talked about this, but I was wondering how, like, is it possible to maintain having a job while doing this program, or is it so like busy that like it's just not possible to do both?
I did work. Did anyone else work before I just like jump in? Okay, so I worked in the summer and I'm working again this summer. And it may be possible, but it's very, very, very hard. Especially like this summer, we would be done with class at like, let's say 3, 4, 5 o'clock, whatever. Then I would go to my job and I was working at a summer camp program. So we were switching to virtual for some of our things and in person for other things. So I had to do like a lot of additional things that I wouldn't normally have to do. So that is worth mentioning as well. But everyone, we have a group chat on Slack, if you're familiar with that. And I remember every day, everyone would be talking about what time they were going to meet on Zoom, or who had finished what assignment, or what questions people had about things. And my phone is blowing up while I'm at work. And then everyone would be talking about like, I'm done with this, and like celebrating things. And then I would come home at 9 or 10 at night, take a shower, have dinner, start homework. So it was very hard to maintain. Now, it is probably worth mentioning that I'm doing it again. So obviously it wasn't impossible because I already know I'm doing it again this summer. But as far as I'm aware, I'm the only person who's done any kind of working. And I think if anyone else has, it's probably more like things where you can pick when you're working. So like Uber, Lyft, can't think of any other like job type things like that, but like something where you could choose when you do shift. Thank you, Dan. Those kinds of things. And I think like the previous cohort had told us that there were some people that had done like things like that. But like a consistent, like even like 10, 15 hour per week kind of thing, it's hard, especially at this point. I mean, I'm spending a lot of time planning things. But maybe it's possible for you. It's probably not super helpful.
So I just want to chime in and add something because Megan and I are friends in this program. Just want to put a little like side note in there. Megan's one of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. She is up so late. Like I'm in bed and I'm trying to cut her off. I'm texting, I'm like 10:30. I'm like, all right, good night, Megan. I need to go to bed. She's like, I'll be up for another 3 or 4 hours. And I'm just like, what? So for me, no, I could not do that. I need my sleep. I would be a hot mess if I tried to do LMAC and work at the same time. So it really depends on your time management, how you do with having late nights, because I have late nights even without a job. So, but maybe certain times of the year, it's easier to do so. Like Megan said, the summer is better because there are more time, like chunks, because classes are kind of spread out. Sorry, Megan, I didn't want to call you out, but you're an exceptional person. It's nothing negative. It's just, I couldn't do what Megan's doing.
It's a lot.
Well, and this program, I mean, it's basically a full-time job because it's almost more than a full-time job, because especially when you get into the student teaching, because you're basically a teacher who doesn't get paid, and then you have classes and other homework on top of that. And so yeah, Megan is pretty exceptional in doing a job on top of this, but it is basically a full-time job plus, and you're not getting paid for it. But it's worth it, and you're building your profession because you'll be working in the future, and that's something my mentor teacher says a lot. He's like, oh, just think this time next year, like you'll be doing this stuff and you'll actually get paid for it. And it's like, oh wow, that's like a nice thought to have. So yeah, so I would say, this is basically a full-time job, and you should probably consider this as a full-time job when you're thinking about what else you'll be doing at the same time, if that makes sense.
I don't have anything to add.
Can each of you maybe speak to a specific practice or area that you have worked on with your mentor teacher and you feel like really comfortable and confident talking about how you've grown in that area?
I can start on that one. So I was worried about small groups. So this was something when I taught pre-K years ago, we didn't do small groups. I had like a classroom of like over 30 kids with a couple assistant teachers to help me. And it was a little bit of a free for all at age 4. So when it got to be in 2nd grade, I didn't know what a small group looked like. I was like really nervous for it for some reason. So I built it up to be this big thing in my head. But then come January, my MT was like, oh, by the way, Lauren, you have 3 small groups a day. And I was like, what? And I hadn't even had the time to observe her in it just because of class schedules, because we got cut off on half days. I couldn't see small groups in the afternoon. So with my MT support, and she kind of threw me into it, small groups has been something that I've really enjoyed. So you work with a group of, 3 to 5 kids, depending on what subject. And it's been my favorite part of my day. You really get to know kids one-on-one, get to work on reading and math skills. So that's something that has really improved for me, going from, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what it means, to feeling really confident and really loving that part of my day.
I would say math for me. I was not a math person growing up. I did not like math at all. I didn't think I was good at it. And I felt that we had a very, very good professor who taught us math methods in the summer and fall terms. And it was very practical. And that was one of the classes that had a lot of balance of like, this is what you could do in virtual, this is what you could do in person. And I loved that class because he taught us things that we were actually using like the next day in our mentor teachers class. Like, this is how you explain fractions to 5th graders. And then the next day I'm doing that. And I loved that my mentor teacher did this program 4 or 5 years ago. So he was able to say like, oh yeah, I remember learning that from Tim too. And like, that is a really good practice. And so I liked that my mentor teacher could name that as well. And every day I taught math, go into a breakout room with me and say like, that was really good that you did this. You should try this next. And I cannot believe that I'm actually excited to teach math now. That was the first unit or the first like content area that I picked up as you gradually move towards like being the lead teacher. And I love it. I like get excited to teach math, and like the 5th grade me is like really weirded out by that. So
So mine is actually the opposite of Lauren's, because all of my experience was working in small groups because I did tutoring. So I was super comfortable with that. I didn't mind working with little groups of students, but I was nervous about the whole group because I've never taught, 20 plus kids at once. But now that I've done it several times every day, it comes very naturally, and it's really not that different from working in a small group. And I just find that all these things that I was nervous about, you get so much experience in them that like you don't even think about it anymore. It just comes like really naturally. And I think that's just been the best thing. It's that you get a lot of experience. So anything that I felt like I was kind of nervous about, maybe the first time might be a little bit shaky, and then you do it a couple times and then it's fine. And I second what Dan said about math. I love teaching math, and like I hated it my whole life. So you'll be surprised what you like in this program.
Something that that I've kind of been working on is kind of holding kids to high expectations, and yet still being kind of nice, if that makes sense. Like we've talked about this concept of being a warm demander, and that's something that I really had to work on, because there's so many times when a kid will be like, I don't get it, and it's like, okay, let me just explain it to you. as opposed to being like, okay, well, let's think about why you don't get that, or let's, asking certain probing questions to get them to kind of do the cognitive work. So that's something that I've been working, especially in the virtual setting. It can be really, really hard to kind of stop yourself from just like explaining everything, or like in my classroom, most of the kids keep their cameras off for the entire time. So like there's a couple kids that it's like, I don't really know what they look like, to be honest. Like I've been working with them for an entire, for the entire school year, and it's like I barely know what they look like. Or some of them I don't know what they sound like because they always type in the chat. But yeah, that's something that I've been working on, is this idea of being a warm demander and holding all kids to high expectations, and yet being there with them to help them reach that expectation. So that's something in my practice that I've been working on, and that I've been working with my mentor teacher about, because there was a time when I think it was like after MLK Day, I was doing a read aloud, and I was like, what do you kids know about Martin Luther King Jr.? And it was silence. And I was like, okay, like here's who he was. And then my mentor teacher was like, hold on, like these kids are in 5th grade. They know who Martin Luther King Jr. is. So yeah, that's something that I've been working on.
I am going to answer the next question that popped up in the chat. The biggest thing that popped into my head was making decisions. I'm very like, in some ways, go with the flow, and when I get stressed, I'm just like, I don't care what we do. And my mentor teacher has told me I'm not a good pair, that she's not a good pair for somebody who can't make decisions, because she constantly is telling me, you choose, this is your classroom, you get to decide whatever you want to do, which is not super helpful. That's more of like a me thing. But the question, can you speak on your experiences building relationships with students and their families throughout the program? It has been different in some ways than it would be other years. Right now we have actually a family communication project where we have specific categories of things that we are required to like document that we're doing with families. So like I'm writing the newsletter now that my mentor teacher sends out. We have to like invite families into the classroom for different things, or like participate in some way. So right now we're doing mystery readers since March is reading month, and I got 6 more emails about it today for signing up families. So like some of the things in the program have been structured specifically to give you different experiences. We also did in the fall, I believe, correct me somebody if I'm wrong, a virtual home visit. So we learned all about like what a home visit is, because the focus of it's not to talk about like behavior or like academics in the sense of like what kids need to do differently, but really like to get to know a family and hear like their hopes and dreams for their child and things like that. So we all were able to do a home visit. And then relationships with students, we spend a lot of time with them, which I think helps with that. You get to know them pretty quickly. We, in my classroom, we do like a morning meeting every day. So one of our things is like a share that we do. And so you hear some very interesting answers to the most random questions. So like today is the one that I had for them, because yesterday was cereal day in our March calendar. I asked them what cereals they liked, and we had some very strong opinions that I did not anticipate about cereal. But I mean, really, like, you get to work with them in small groups, you talk to them. A lot of ours, we're trying to push them away during breaks to like get away from the computer, go move your body, have a snack, don't sit here, but they just want to like chat and chat. So we that's probably not the most helpful answer, but like building relationships with students even online, there's some aspect of it that like comes naturally.
Yeah, and another thing too about being online that's been interesting in terms of like building these relationships is like you really get an insight into like these kids' environments. Like like you see it, like, you know, when they have their cameras on, it's like you're seeing their bedroom. Sometimes you see their siblings will come, and like, especially it's really cute when like little babies come up to the camera and are doing stuff. Yeah, lots of pets. So that is something that's been interesting about this year, is that I was like, how am I going to build relationships with these students when we're online? Like, feels so weird to be like talking to someone on Zoom all day. But it actually has opened up an opportunity to like really see like, oh well, I know like when this kid unmutes, I can barely hear him because there's a television going on, there's babies crying, there's dogs barking. So I know that he is in a chaotic environment. And so I can keep that in mind when I'm thinking about, you know, the things that he's doing at home, like homework or whatever, might be different for him because he's in this, you know, different environment, or this environment that might not be conducive to, you know, doing a bunch of math homework. So yeah, so that was something that's been really interesting this year, is you don't just see them at school, because you kind of see them at home too. And so you get this, you kind of get to see the kid as something we talk about a lot, is seeing the whole child in this program. And so even though we're virtual and it's like it's a weird relationship that we're forming with them, it is a genuine relationship, and we do get to experience something, or we get to experience them in, you know, this weird environment, but it's still we can still build those relationships.
Go Dan.
Okay. I want to second what Megan said. I found the virtual home visit to be like a really, really amazing, like one of the highlights from our first semester. Because we spent all this time preparing for it, and you know, choosing a child to get to meet with their parents. And I just feel like the next morning, I like knew that child better after speaking with her mom. And you know, we met at like 6 p.m. and like I just finished dinner and stuff, and it was just a very like real moment between you know, a student teacher and a parent. And also my mentor teacher allowed me to go to parent teacher conferences in October. I think a lot of us in the program did go to that. It wasn't required, but he said, this is a great practice. You're going to have to do these on your own next year. So I got to meet, you know, all of the students' parents through that, and, you know, discuss a plan on how we wanted their child to succeed in virtual school. And I thought that was really, really helpful for building relationships, even if we can't see each other in 3D.
Yeah, I was also going to say parent teacher conferences. We also had a curriculum night, which was like an after school thing that we presented and told a little bit about ourselves as teachers to the parents. And we got to see some people then. And also, depending on the kids' home situation, sometimes parents are home, so they're in the background and they might be hearing things, or sometimes they'll come up and be like, hey, Miss Perry, I have a question. So they'll sometimes pop in, which is definitely interesting because you're like in their space. You never really know what's going on in the background or who's hearing what. So, but yeah, parent teacher conferences, curriculum nights, sometimes they're just there in the setting. And one other thing, we do go to staff meetings virtually still. And so it's good to see some other teachers and hear what's going on with the school as well. So to build the relationships in the school that you're also at.
Yeah, I think a lot about relationships and building relationships. And I think that when you're virtual, naturally, it's going to be slower. It's a slower process of like really getting to know people, but you can still get to know your students in an authentic way. And you can still get to know the parents in a really authentic way. And I feel like the relationships I have with my students are genuine. And like I do understand them. And their parents understand that I'm there to help them, that I'm on their kids' side, you know? And like the rules that apply for building relationships in person are the same ones here, right? Like the more you meet somebody, you know, humor, taking an interest in what they say, bringing up conversations that they've had with you before. It's the same way that you build relationships. So I think, of course, if we were in person, that would have happened much quicker. But I think that with parents and with students, and even with my mentor teacher and the other staff at school, I've definitely been able to build authentic relationships. Mia, I see your question. Do you feel that you've had time to go home for the weekend, or have you just set that aside for breaks in the calendar year? So my family's in Dearborn, which is like a 40-minute drive from Ann Arbor. I go home every weekend. I haven't felt like I haven't been able to go home. I think when I had the MTTC a couple weeks ago, it was on the weekend. I still went home that weekend, actually. I've gone home, I think, every weekend. So I've always had time for that.
Yeah, I'm from Grand Rapids. I don't go home every weekend, but I have carved out time of like, I'm going home this weekend. That's kind of been an upside of virtual, is that I can just take my laptop and plan for Monday anywhere. So yes, of course, I've been home for holidays and stuff, but I've had a couple weekends where I've been able to go home as well.
I did not move to Ann Arbor because it was about this time last year that we, once our day got canceled, I kind of was like, ooh, I'm gonna pause the apartment search a little bit till we know a little more. And then I live like an hour and 15 minutes from Ann Arbor. So it's a long commute, but it's a doable commute. So I just kind of waited and ended up being here. And I mean, I drove to U of M for the vaccine on Saturday. So that's what I'll be doing when we go back in person. And if our summer program is in person, I'll just be commuting for that as well. So I'm probably not the most helpful, but that drive doesn't scare me in terms of like, oh no, that's so much time to take away from planning or anything like that.
Yeah, I can't really speak to this because I live with my parents at home. So, which has actually been really, really helpful in terms of affording this program, you know. But yeah, I mean, it is busy and it's a lot. And this year was weird because it's like we're not really going anywhere anyway because you can't really go anywhere. But I definitely think that that it's not so overwhelming that you won't be able to, go places or go home during it. It's not that, it's that would be doable for sure.
I kind of have a question. So you all talk about how like some of you are here, some of you are not. How have you bonded as a cohort? Like what are the relationships like? And like I know it's virtual, but how do you think that'll bleed into next year?
Okay, I want to talk first. So I can say the 4 people that are in this program with me, I sincerely love them all so much. Like they are amazing people and I would love to stay in touch with them. We are able to stay in touch. Like we do outside Zoom things sometimes. There has been a couple situations where we can safely like get to be with each other in person, social distancing. And then also just on Slack, which sounds so silly, but it's kind of like a professional social media that you can communicate with each other. Also, you work on a lot of group projects together. So I just love this group of people. I feel so lucky every day that I get to do it with them.
Yeah, it is funny because like most of us have never, at least I haven't seen most of these people in person. Although I saw Dan and Fatima when I went to get my vaccine, and Dan is very tall. You can't tell on Zoom, but he's very tall. But yeah, I mean, that was something that I really was looking forward to, was like was kind of the cohort, because it is like, couple, 20 something people that you're all together doing the same thing. And it's been, I mean, everyone who's done this program, at least this year, like, I don't know, there hasn't been like any drama or like weird stuff, you know what I mean? Like we've all like really been getting through it together, and it's so nice to have people who are going through the same thing that you're going through to be able to talk to about it, to bounce ideas off of each other. Yeah, the relationships that we formed from this cohort, I think are going to be lifelong, because at least I hope so. I don't know. So yeah, it's and it is weird because it's virtual and like we're all going through this like global pandemic together. So I think that might help with the bonding. But I think just the fact that you have, this many people who are, interested not only in teaching, but also this program has such a social justice lens to everything. And so it's like you're also working with people who share very similar ideals and values and that kind of thing too, which I think is also really helpful in kind of building these deeper relationships.
We also, before the program started, we did some like Zoom calls back when we didn't do Zoom calls every single day, to get to know some people. And I know that like I've heard from a couple of our professors that this cohort is one of the closest cohorts that they've had in a few years. So I will say, if we are able to do that with like, I've never seen a single one of my classmates in person, hopefully at some point eventually. But if we are able,
You met me in person once, Megan, before the program started.
yeah, okay, so I take that back. And I think Shannon, you were also there at that day. So I have met some of you in person. Darren and Fatima, maybe at some point. But if we're able to like be close like that, having rarely or never like actually met in person, we think that that probably would be like from conversations I've had from other interns, we probably would be even closer if we were like regularly seeing each other every day like you would be in person. So it's still possible.
Dan, you look like you want to talk. Do you want to go or should I go? Okay. Fortunately, being in Ann Arbor, I have been able to meet a number of our classmates here. And, that's been really nice. It makes it, like I say, it's easier to build relationships when you're in person. And so that it's been really nice being in Ann Arbor and being around some of the classmates here. But even with people who I haven't met in person, I do feel like there are people that I could rely on, that I could reach out to. It's not weird. You know how sometimes you don't really know people and you're kind of like, oh, should I reach out? Shouldn't I? I don't feel that way really about anybody in the program. But I do feel fortunate at the same time that I was able to meet a number of people in person and that we do get to socialize every now and then.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I felt like I had like really close friends after like the first 2 weeks in the program, even though it was all over Zoom, because I think the program really prioritized how much we needed to like build relationships. And we moved from class to class and all these seminars together, and we all had that like shared experience. And it makes it a lot easier to move towards like socializing afterwards, when you're, going through all the same stuff together.
All right, so I am going to cut in briefly, boo, party pooper, boo, just to say that we are probably coming up on our last question here. So if we could, just to make sure that we're respecting our very busy interns' time, if we have one more question for tonight, I think that's how we'll close it out. All right, last call for a question going. And we have a question in the chat. So if our interns want to take a crack at that, then I have one thing that I need to say before we go, and that will be that.
So I see, did anyone happen to talk about funding? We have not. I believe that this year, everyone in the program did get some scholarship, but the amount was different. I don't know the bottom point. I think it was like 20,500 was like the higher level. But as far as I know, everyone did get some degree of funding. And for us, there is a benefit for those that didn't move to Ann Arbor because you don't have to pay like rent and all those other things. So that actually made this a very affordable program. Someone else might have more that they can share. And everyone I've talked to, like in financial aid, like I see Fatima put information about that. Everyone's been super helpful with any questions I've had in any capacity, funding or any type of thing.
So I'm the one who asked the question. I was just curious. So if you've been given your award and you need to fill in the gaps, as I'm sure many of you do, did you just rely on student loans? Were there other scholarship opportunities? Did you find outside funding? Because I'm kind of in that search at the moment and I wasn't sure, like, you know, I'll make it work somehow, but I was curious how other people have made that work.
Yeah, so I can talk. I had that same thing where I had a bit of a gap, but I had some AmeriCorps money from, or AmeriCorps like financial, or I don't know, it's like I can't think of what it's called at this moment, education award, something like that. So I had that, and then during the program, I got another scholarship. So like after the program had started, I got another scholarship that was able to cover another semester for me. So there were, I don't know exactly how it works, but there are other opportunities to get scholarships even once the program has started.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Did you apply for outside scholarships, or was that one? I know when I put in my application for this coming year, it was you're just automatically considered for a lot of the various scholarships, but I didn't know like if you actually sought the ones that you have to apply for specifically as well.
Yeah, I didn't seek out any. I think you can. I was just nominated for one, but I think that there are ones that you can, or outside ones that you can search for, but I don't know too much about that.
Thank you.
And unfortunately, our time has come to an end for tonight, but I do want to say, as I'm sure you all do as well, thank you so much to our current interns. We greatly appreciate your time. And here's my annual plug. To any of you who attended this event and found a conversation with current students helpful, next year, when you get an email from me that says, hey, do you want to talk to some prospective students? Just remember how helpful this was. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to join us tonight. Have a terrific evening, and I hope to see you all again soon. Stay safe, take care, keep in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Bye, everyone.
Take care, everybody.